Hi, my name is Jack McLean and I'm the founder of Prepare Like a Pro. Growing up, I loved playing cricket and football and had a strong passion for helping others. Over the past 11 years working in the industry, I've been lucky enough to have worked alongside Sean Murphy, the head strength and conditioning coach at Essendon, Luke Boyd, physical performance manager at Hawthorn, and interned under Andrew Russell, high performance director at Caulfield. I started Prepare Like a Pro after my time as a strength and conditioning coach at Hawthorn Football Club to help developing footballers gain a competitive edge with AFL standard preparation methods. If you're a developing footballer wanting to take your game to the next level, we'd love to help you. At Prepare Like a Pro, you can expect to not only improve your athleticism, but also lower your risk of injury or overload. There are training programs suitable for every level of involvement. I would love to help you choose the one that best suits your goals and personal motivation. Head to our Inquire Now page and I'll get back to you soon. Welcome back to Prepare Like a Pro live chat show. My name is Jack McLean. I'm the host tonight and our guest is Dylan Shiel. Dylan is a professional rules footballer playing for the Essendon Football Club. He attended Caulfield Grammar School, graduated in 2010 and played his juniors at Dandenong Stingrays in the TAC Cup. He has played a total of 180 AFL games, 135 with the GWS Giants and 45 with the Essendon Football Club. Before we start tonight's episode, our mission here at Prepare Like a Pro is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show your support by following us on Instagram and subscribing to the podcast. Welcome, Dylan. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Thanks for having me, Jack. I really like that the intro video there. It just makes me think, imagine if these sort of resources were available to my generation when we were growing up, would have been twice the player that I am today.
Yeah, it's amazing the technology, isn't it? That we can just share this information live and looking at where people are streaming in. We've got different people on YouTube, Facebook, a couple on LinkedIn, or just watching it from their home, which when there's not much else to do, this is a bit of good entertainment, mate. Share your story. So I'm super
Yeah,
excited to have you
yeah,
on.
hopefully a bit of positivity to be spread in the social media game tonight, instead of what's sort of been going on Twitter and the commentary around things in Melbourne at the moment.
Absolutely. We're cleaning out the garbage.
Yeah, that's it.
Bringing down the ratings too. From an MA down to a PG level, or maybe M15. We'll see how we go. But take us back to the beginning of your career, mate. At what age did you start playing your footy, and where did you play your junior footy?
Oh yeah, I can't even remember what when the passion for the game footy came to me. From as early as I can remember, I was kicking a footy and menacing the family with my obsession with kicking the footy around the house and trying to kick my McDonald's football through the door frames as goals. And I think pretty early on the old man thought I'd better get me into some competitive footy, and started with Auskick, like most kids do through the programs these days, and then I began playing my junior football career at my local football club at Edith Vale Aspendale Junior Football Club down in the on the bay side there. And I played there till the age of about 16, and then as you got to around that age, you start to get noticed by the development channels. So I was part of the Dandenong Stingrays zoning in the TAC Cup, and played a season there before getting drafted as a concession pick to Team GWS, they were called at the time, before they were called the Giants. And during that time, I experienced some state level footy for the schoolboys Victorian team, and played school football while I attended St Bede's Mentone for 4 years, and then my last 2 years of school were at Caulfield Grammar in the APS competition.
Yeah, awesome. And like in terms of your footy development, where did you find, where were your main influences and sort of mentors early days?
Certainly my parents. most boys will look to their dad for, development and coaching, when it comes to, football, I've found. So, yeah, my dad was a huge influence and still is today.
Yep.
And then also had just, junior football coaches along the way that mostly were just my mates' dads as well, which were, thought I was really, really lucky looking back at it now, how much like the group of guys that I played just local footy with, how we lucked into some, just some really good people that were, coaching us footy, but they were just, being good dads and teaching us to be good kids.
Yep.
So yeah, they taught me some things about footy that, served me really, really well, and they taught me to be a good person as well. And then, as I got a little bit older, you start to get exposed to more professional coaching and, things that are going to take you to that next level. And, I'll be forever grateful for my time at Caulfield Grammar under Greg Meredith, who was my coach there for 2 years. And then when I ended up in Greater Western Sydney, I was coached under Mark Williams, who is, my future father-in-law, who's been probably my biggest, probably my biggest influence on my career, since the age of 18 onwards. So, been really, really lucky to, be, surrounded by some really impressive figures in football.
Yep. And going back to your junior career, at what age did you discover that you had a talent for the game and that it was something that you wanted to work on and pursue towards the AFL, being a professional footballer?
Yeah, well, being a naive Melbourne kid, and if you ask your auntie who taught me in primary school, I would have
Yep.
said I would have said I was playing AFL from the age of 4 or 5, and
Yep.
and meant it. And I didn't have any backup plan for a while there, and then I started to understand that that it would probably I probably had to respect the conversation a little bit more after my dad sort of said, "Tone it down a little bit, Dylan. You might need to come up with a plan B here." But then, probably up until the age of 15, I think I made the All Australian team as a 15-year-old in the schoolboy competition, and it was around about that age that I thought that I'm on track here to getting drafted, and that this started to become a pretty big focus in my life, along with school at that time.
Yep. And what did that change for you when you started to make that shift towards striving towards the AFL? Did you change your lifestyle? Did you change your training intensity, or did you sort of just keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, you only know what you know at the time, and that it just meant just training harder, and still enjoying it. I just wanted to play good footy and have a good time and just be the best player I could be at every training session and every game I played. And, it was a pretty simple formula. And, at times I think, we can overcomplicate the game and at the highest level. And sometimes it's a simple mindset like that is required to be your best.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was certainly passionate and could start to sort of put it all together, the opportunity that I had in front of me, not for just football, but for my life as well. And so that really excited me. And yeah, I certainly went really hard at it. And, whenever I wasn't doing my schoolwork, I was, focusing on footy from the age of 16 onwards.
Yeah, yeah. And we're coming up to draft night. Take yourself back to that period of your life. I think we're about 2 and a bit weeks away from it for the guys in Melbourne that will do the combine. There's whispers they might have to do Strava 2K at the moment, which is
Nice.
a little bit different. But for
Employ
those
a mate who's a good runner.
what was that?
Said you should employ a mate of yours or anybody who's
Yeah,
got a mate that's a runner.
yeah. You can imagine the stuff that will be going on. I can't
Yeah.
imagine how you police that, but
Mm.
yeah, for the guys that are in that mode at the moment, take yourself back to that time. How did you sort of approach it, and how much training were you doing, and what were you doing outside of your training as well to help you prepare for the combine?
Yeah, Jack, my journey into the AFL was a little bit different to the guys that have gone through the draft in previous years and in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep.
I went to GWS as a concession pick, and because the team hadn't started, they were given these concessions to essentially build the team from scratch, and part of that was picking up 12, 17-year-olds before a year before their draft. And
Yep.
so I was lucky enough to be one of those 17-year-olds, and the day it happened for me, Graham Gubby Allen was the list manager and GM of the GWS at the time, was attending a lot of school football matches and TAC Cup matches, but looking at the younger kids, not the 18-year-old kids. And after a school match against Haileybury, he just came up to my parents at 3/4 time and said, "Tell your kid to pack his bags. He's coming to Sydney at the end of the season." And that was my draft experience.
So were you playing 10As? Was that what he was watching, or were you playing in the first
I was in the first, so I was doing year 12 a year younger than what you usually would do year 12. So I finished year 12 as a 17-year-old, not an 18-year-old. So it worked out really well. I was able to go straight out of school, straight up to Sydney, and play in the state league competition there as an 18-year-old, instead of having to stay in Melbourne, play my top year of TAC Cup footy, and then go into the draft the following year. So yeah, it was a unique experience. So my journey into the AFL was a little bit under the radar and not as exciting and as theatrical as what the kids go through these days in the draft.
Yeah, but in its own way, that's a cool story. So 12 guys. Were you 12, or were the guys in that age group, that under 17s? Were you aware that was a possibility that year, like that you could get drafted that year, or did it come to you as a surprise?
Because we were at the time, like most of us were part of the AIS AFL Academy from the age of 16 and 17. So like we were aware of what had happened the previous year with Gold Coast Suns, and when they announced the license of Team GWS at the time, you knew that you were falling into that category between January 1st and I think it was May 30th of 17-year-olds that they were able to basically pinch a year before the draft. And yeah, certainly thought that was a possibility. And then, yeah, when it happened, I was still over the moon. I was, incredibly excited. But yeah, it's a cool little story. It's certainly a different one compared to what most guys go through these days.
Absolutely. And then packing your bags, like you said, and getting ready and going to Sydney. So you were able to finish year 12. How did you find that transition from finishing year 12 going straight into professional football? What was that transition like?
Yeah, well, my last 3 months of school were, it was challenging to stay motivated to, do the best I could in year 12, because I'd just been told I've been drafted and was going to be paid some pretty good money compared to my mates the following year. So
Yeah,
I managed to get through year 12 and, had a crack, but probably would have done better if I wasn't drafted. Would have been more motivated to do a bit better. But I finished my last year 12 exam and had a massive going away party that night. And then 2 days later, I packed my bags and I moved up to the suburbs of Western Sydney. And then basically from there, it was a full-time footballer up until today. And, the transition into being a professional athlete, I really have just loved that lifestyle. I was probably with my my mindset, my personality, I'm really suited to a really full-on regimented program, even from a young age. So I love every moment of training and a football program and just everything that comes with being a professional athlete. I've just really enjoyed it. And there's some things that you don't enjoy later on. You come to realise there's a lot of other things that go with it. But at that time, I just walked into a new club and I just went from being a part-time footballer and a student to a full-time footballer under Kevin Sheedy and Mark Williams, and I was just like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, I can imagine what a great thing to go through. And Like you said, that's not a bad place to be compared to your other mates stressing out about year 12, and you're sort of licking your lips like, yeah, go to school,
Yeah.
boys.
And I mean, like they went to, schoolies and, they, did all that sort of stuff after school. And honestly didn't bother me. Like I was, just, was living the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really, really fortunate and really, really lucky to get picked up.
And you mentioned you like to have a simple approach to high performance, and that's just being your best at every training session and every game. Um, but if you were talking to your younger self before that experience of getting drafted, and you're now in the system as a 17-year-old, what would you have wished you had in your pathway, in the different pathway systems that you were either taken off guard or surprised about? Is there any particular area that you felt like you weren't prepared for, or did you feel that the transition was you were pretty ready to become a full-time footballer?
Yeah. Good question. I actually find like the most impressive guys that come into football clubs these days are the ones that are like just a complete blank canvas for the coaches and the football club to work with. I felt like at times being really driven and professional from a pre AFL career days. Not is not I wouldn't say detrimental to the transition into AFL, but you can come in with some you know, maybe some niggles. You might have overtrained as a 16, 17-year-old. It's under less professional guidance on how to manage your body and, training methods. And maybe even the way you sort of approach your game, to be trying to get the footy as much as you can as a 17, 18-year-old might be detrimental to other parts of your game. So, when you come into the AFL system, you go from being, the best player in every team you played in for your life to, you get knocked down the order at an AFL list. So you have to learn different ways to influence the game.
Yep.
So, I look at guys at the moment that at Essendon and like Nick Cox and Archie Perkins. They've come off 12 months of no football prior
Yeah.
to joining the AFL. And they've come in and they've just been these guys that are just so open to change and open to new ideas under, the coaches at Essendon. And they've had an incredible influence in their first season. And I just look at that and go, wow, like if I had my time again, I almost do less prior to joining the AFL.
Yeah.
Still train hard and still be motivated, but don't need to be so concerned about, having an incredibly strong bench press or, having a really strong 3-rep max squat and all these sorts of things. Just come in injury free and let them build you up.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting take, and it's something actually that we haven't talked about on this podcast about our guys that did experience that year. And Archie Perkins, Nick Cox are two boys in that draft year, and they've performed incredibly well as any guys in their first year. And that's off no base, which is an interesting concept of not playing footy the year before. So you feel like at times when you're especially the talented guys in those, whether you're getting picked in the top squads, AIS and you're in that environment too early, you can be too conditioned and work too hard, whether it be physical but also the mental side. You're not a clean canvas like you mentioned, where if you go in a little bit more like an open book, it's easier to sort of adjust to the system.
Yeah, there's an element of that I think I could have done better. Because I came in, you see guys, or when I was coming into the AFL, I came in with a history of foot-related stress injuries, and I had a navicular stress fracture from overtraining. There were guys like Johnny Patton was the pick one in my draft year, and he came in with patellar tendonitis issues, and there's guys coming in with osteitis pubis and all these sort of problems from overtraining, and I just felt like when you come into the system, you get set back a bit, and compared to guys that have just coming in blank canvas, you get your strength and conditioning team, you get the coaches that just got this raw body that's ready to be built up from there, and and done the right way, compared to with the right intentions, parents and kids trying to get an advantage early on and hitting the gym and doing excessive amounts of load more than what their bodies can handle.
Yeah, yeah. And do you think it comes down to the parents and the athlete to manage and say no, because I know when you're at that top level, when you, like you said, you're at a private school, you're at a TAC Cup, you're playing stateside, so you're getting pulled left, right, and centre from all these teams. There's probably house sports at halftime, at lunchtime, so and then there's gym in the mornings. So how much is it the environment that needs to change, and how much do you think it is the athlete and maybe the parents or whoever's sort of the guardian of the athlete?
Yeah, I'm sure it's a combination of everything, really. I guess the parent has the ultimate say on an underage kid, but if the sort of resources that I'm talking about, like Prepare Like a Pro and ball magnets and all these sorts of programs that are now available online to parents and kids, they can be really useful in increasing their understanding of body management and looking after their kids' energy levels and bodies. I remember in the year I did my navicular stress fracture, I played 35 games of football that season and went straight into summer athletics. And I just, looking back at it now, I go, well, no wonder I broke down. And, consequently, I missed the, 6 to 9 months of football. And a big part of that was not being able to play in the AIS Academy games overseas. And I just think, well, probably, and there was a lot of other guys that were in a similar boat to me. We were just doing too much and we just didn't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's such an interesting point that you raise, and I do think that there, like you mentioned, there's some in the private sector, there's some businesses that are helping, and it sounds also like with what's happened with COVID, there's a few guys certainly I've interviewed that were working in the AFL or elite sport that have now moved to the high school setting, and are starting to put these programs in place and monitoring wellness, GPS, and starting to look at I guess being a sound, like organising the athletes, whether they are working at all different places, and just making sure there's communication. So if you are training at Metro one night, communicating that he had a session that morning and things like that, so there's a bit of a handover, which hopefully will help. Because it's pretty hard for a 17-year-old to say no, wasn't it, at that age when you want to get drafted?
No doubt. I mean, yeah, like just what you sort of said then, with that sort of technology available, and that clarity of what you're doing with the training, be very beneficial for kids these days. And it's probably hard for them to resist doubling up on training, or playing 2 games of footy in a week. But yeah, you take it from someone 10 years later, it's you think every game is the most important game in your life around that age, and you just sort of, I look back now and go, if you just take a step back and simplify things and do less, do it right, but do a little bit less to make sure that your body is not cooked, then it'll set you up for a really good transition to take on more of what you want to do under the guidance of the pros.
Yeah, there you go, guys. Developing footballers that are tuned in, get the notepad out, and less is more from the man Dylan Shiel. So that's a great message for young footballers.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to work hard, but more often than not, you're probably going to be in an environment where the work rate, if you're motivated, you know where you want to go, is going to come, isn't it? So it is being able to manage and make sure that you're accumulating weeks of work rather than having setbacks along the journey.
Yeah, well, it might be, and it's not like I'm not saying not working hard, but I'm saying, you'd almost, like they say, you'd rather be a little bit underdone than overcooked,
Yep.
because once you go too far, then you're overcooked and you set yourself back a long way. And there's just so many like things out there these days that people can do to gain an advantage with whatever they're doing that doesn't require such physical strain on
Yep.
their body. And I've since moving to Melbourne, I've found parts that I can, or things that I can do away from the footy field that make me feel better, and I'm not getting too much stress in the body. And that's things like I'm doing with Mark McGrath with the Skillful Means program, like things like that increasing my performance without the strain on the body that people can do. And then obviously there's the mental mindset training that is just emerging before our eyes in the last few years, that people are gaining incredible advantages on others.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mark McGrath, he was on the podcast. I think he was episode 2. For those that want to tune into his philosophy, he goes into detail. It's probably one of our longest episodes, actually, about his DNS program. He loves
Yeah.
loves to talk about. He's a very passionate guy. But you mentioned
So knowledgeable.
and very knowledgeable. You mentioned skillful means, was it?
Yeah, Skillful Means. Yeah, like the company that Mark's set up with Troy Simmons.
Yep.
It's a combination of what Mark does with the DNS, and Troy brings in his his movement training as well, which is new to me, but something I've really enjoyed exposure to, along with guys like Tom Mitchell and Dan Hanbury.
Awesome. Yeah, nice crew there. All right, well, let's
Yeah.
have a quick drink break, and then we'll be back after this is a short video about our academy. Hi, I'm Jack McLean, an AFL football strength and conditioning coach, and I want to introduce you to the Prepare Like a Pro Academy. Our academy is a subscription-based platform where you can sign up to be a part of our community. If you get to the end of each episode of the podcast and are hungry for more, this is for you. Designed for aspiring AFL athletes and staff, you'll receive heaps of bonus weekly content, learn who the guests are in advance, and submit questions. Access to our Facebook group with Jack and other Prepare Like a Pro coaches. You'll be able to receive merchandise, program discounts, and freebies, and get free access to our live events, exercise technique database, and much more. This is a great way for you to support the podcast, and it helps me with production and release of epic content for you guys each week. Your contribution goes a long way in making the Prepare Like a Pro community possible. For a small monthly fee, you'll have access to all of the special content released on our Academy forums. There's no lock-in and you can cancel absolutely anytime. Okay, welcome back, guys. If you have any questions for Dylan, use the chat box. I know a couple of you have already sent through some questions. We'll do a Q&A in 5 minutes time, but we're now at the Patreon section for the podcast, mate. So this is more of a get to know you. It's a lighter side of the podcast, not as serious. Starting with, what is your favorite movie or TV series that has impacted you?
Well, my favorite movies, I'm a big Quentin Tarantino fan. So all of his movies I just love. But in terms of impact on me, I think of what I've watched recently, which were I just watched the Michael Schumacher documentary on Netflix. I'm just trying to think of things I've watched recently, and I found that really fascinating. I'm actually a bit of an F1 fan, and
Yep.
to get a bit of an insight into the competitiveness of Michael Schumacher, who's obviously along with Hamilton one of the best of the best. It was really interesting, and you keep watching things like that, The Last Dance about Michael Jordan, and watch documentaries on Kobe Bryant and Roger Federer. You just get there's a common theme with these sort of guys around these unrelenting standards to never give in, and always sort of pushing through adversity. So yeah, like the Netflix doco Michael Schumacher is something that is just on at the moment. I think it's pretty cool to watch. There's always breadcrumbs laid out there for people that are obviously looking for motivation or like key messaging. I always find.
Yeah, it's a good time for feel good shows at the moment. Bit of inspiration.
Yeah.
A little bit of that. On that note, favorite inspirational quote or life motto?
One that I'm implementing at the moment, and it's around that sort of stripping back things and having a bit more simplicity in my life, kind of pulling it from the Bruce Lee mentality. But if things aren't a definite yes, then it's a definite no, and it's just about me prioritizing things in my life and being a bit more efficient and effective with my behaviors every day, and just trying to make every day count towards my goal, and in line with my purpose. So if it's not a definite yes, it's a definite no.
Yeah, like it. Nice. And in your work life, so in terms of regards to footy, what are your pet peeves? What fires you up? What makes you angry?
What makes me angry in my workplace?
Yeah, so it could be from a training standards point of view or on game day. What's a What's something that gets you pissed off, I guess, with a teammate?
Oh no, I'm actually pretty. I'm getting better at the moment. Like probably in the last couple of years, I've settled down and I'm able to contain myself a little bit more, or just be a little bit more accepting and understanding of guys around me. And if things aren't to the level I'd like, then I'm just able to just park that to the side and continue going about what I'm doing.
Yep.
But there's one thing at the Giants that I used to hate, and that was the idea that having your hands on your knees was a sign of weakness during a training session or a big running effort. And it used to just annoy the shit out of me when you'd be doing these effort runs and you get to the end of a big effort and you're absolutely gassed, because that's what the bloody drill's designed to do, and your instinctual reactions to go hands to knees. And it's,
Research, Shane, that's the most efficient way to get.
yeah. I mean, yeah, like you listen to, the dialogue you'd have with like Mark McGrath, and they'd be the best people in the world to explain why something like that is actually really beneficial for you to recover and breathe, allowing your diaphragm to expand and having a straight spine during that time, versus having your hands on your head and tilting your diaphragm in your chest. So something little like that used to piss me off a fair bit, because I was like, I'm trying to optimize recovery here. It's not a sign of weakness. I remember I used to always say Robert Harvey was one of the greatest ever, and he used to do it all the time.
Yeah, I think there's photos of all the legends doing it. Your Kobe's, your Michael Jordans.
Yeah.
There's a fair bit of body intelligence, isn't there, going on that sometimes we're
Yeah.
not aware of. But I'm pretty sure someone's done a research on it, and it is the most efficient breathing pattern for like you said, for using your diaphragm and opening up your lungs. And there you go. That's a good one. I like it. I guess if you still, the coaches hate when their head's down, isn't it? Because then you're out of the game. So as long as your eyes are up, you can argue you're still tactically in the game and you're recovering off.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I just think if you can recover more effectively, then you're going to be more effective when you get out and back on the game or on the ground to give effort. So yeah, that was one little thing. There's a lot. You're playing a game of imperfections and mistakes. There's countless of things that are going to upset people and get on their nerves. That's for sure.
Yep. These two are a COVID-free world, if we can imagine that, after the last year and a half. But we'll do it here. We'll dream a bit. What's your favourite way to spend your day off in a COVID-free world?
It usually starts with having a really good sleep, and then having a coffee in the morning. And if it's I just enjoy getting out in great weather and spending time with my girlfriend Georgie, and usually being somewhere close to the beach is always a good way to spend the day. Since I got down to Melbourne, I've actually really got addicted to golf, and that's certainly been put on hold since COVID's re-emerged. So yeah, I'd squeeze in a couple of rounds of golf on one day as well. So yeah, that'd be nice.
Yep. And favorite holiday destination and why?
Favorite, I'd say within Australia, I love going to Noosa, and I've had some really good holidays up there, and I've actually had some pretty cool training camps there with the Giants. It's just a great place, great weather. And then overseas, I really enjoyed going to Hawaii a couple of years ago. I had a really good time there with my girlfriend.
Yep. Going back to your career, so like you mentioned, you were picked up at the ripe old age of 17, and you had to grow up quick living in Sydney, and you're playing at GWS Giants. What was your transition like from, like you said, play while the team wasn't in the AFL yet, but playing in the reserves and developing, I guess, team chemistry with those other 12 guys who are in the same boat? What was the transition like from then playing AFL footy?
Oh, that year was probably one of the most enjoyable years of footy I've ever been a part of. It just had such a great time just developing and being under playing with guys that you're becoming really close mates with, and playing in a league where it was their first sort of open senior football league-wide experience. So just testing yourselves against matured men, and having some pretty good moments in your development that gave you real confidence to transition into the AFL. So I really enjoyed that year, and getting to sort of live away from home for the first time, and be a real independent human being. And then entering the AFL year, that's when we had the influx of the guys coming through the AFL draft. So we had the John Patton, Steve Cornelio, Dom Tyson draft, where they went 1, 2, 3, and had guys like Tom Scully, who's one of my closest mates, Callum Ward, Phil Davis, Reece Palmer, all get picked up by the Giants, or picked up or poached from their clubs at the time. And it was just, looking back at it now, I was incredibly anxious as well at the same time, because you're trying to figure out if you're going to be able to become an AFL player and hold your spot in the team, and and trying to sort of figure how you sort of sit with yourself as a growing man in a pretty ruthless industry. And I look back at it now, and I wish I just enjoyed it more for what it was, and I wasn't so stressed about trying to compare myself and being worried about being the absolute best version of myself all the time. I would have had if I had my time again, I would have been able to have a bit more acceptance and just sort of enjoy the moment a little bit more, and understand that mistakes will get made and nothing's going to be perfect.
Yeah, and like I can imagine that's another one that is so hard for an athlete that's driven to be their best, to get that balance right and recognise when they're being overcritical on themselves and it's not constructive to playing your best footy and, like you said, enjoying it. What sort of mental skills have you done over time to help develop that awareness and, I guess, maturity in the mental space?
Yeah, well, haven't really. I wasn't aware of what mental training was, or the mindset training was, probably until my second last year at GWS. So that was about six years into my career. Up until then, it was you're at the mercy of those that are in charge at times, and as grateful and as beneficial as they were for my football at times, that approach of trying to be perfectionism was really driven into our players, and look, it's just an unattainable thing to achieve in such an imperfect game. So it probably fueled my anxiety, and a lot of guys were really stressed about performing at their best in a high performance industry. And then the club got in a performance psychologist, Sean Richardson, who has done a ton of work in the AFL, mostly linked with Ross Lyon at St Kilda and Fremantle.
Yep.
And he was my first experience or exposure to performance psychology, and unlocking yourself to play to the best of your ability. And the club then also got a meditation coach, and we started exposing our players to that at the time. And then since I've transitioned to Essendon, probably the biggest thing I noticed when I got to the Bombers was the importance that they place in their footy program on mindfulness and these mental training programs and skills. And it's just really just trying to simplify the game and yourself, and optimize those 2 hours per week that you need to be your absolute best. Because you can be carrying a lot of things in your day-to-day life, and if you're taking those sort of things into a game that can be disrupting your performance, it's going to be pretty detrimental. So I found that probably the best thing I've taken from these sort of things is just being able to free yourself up, and going into that 2 hours completely blank and free. And that's generally when guys play their best footy, or any athlete plays at their best, is when they're free and they're not thinking and they're just executing.
Yeah, yeah. And early days when you're first exposed to, like you mentioned, the mindfulness training, did you find it overwhelming? Like you said, you hadn't been exposed to it in junior days and for the first 6 years. Was it quite hard to transfer it into your normal routine, or did it just resonate with you straight away? For someone who hasn't done it, that's listening and is interested, obviously hearing it from yourself that it was effective. Um,
Yeah.
how did you come to integrating it in and to make it work for yourself?
Yeah. Well, my first opinion on, like a psychologist at the football club was like, you're only going there if you've got mental health problems or you're mentally weak.
Yep.
And like, we know that that's wrong, but everyone kind of thought that at the time. And like the mentally tough players just get on with it and
Mm-hmm.
suppress and compartmentalize their issues in order to perform. And we know now that that's really detrimental to your mental health. And so when the Giants introduced, us having a sports psychologist come and a mindfulness coach, I was really stressed and I was really anxious. I was loving football and at the same time and was so passionate about what we were doing. But at the same time, it was just when things were tough, it was really, really a stressful environment to be in. And you'd take it home and things were really, really, on your mind all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really ready when we started meditating and doing mindfulness and we started talking about, performance psychology and what that looked for each individual. And as a team, I was, along with the group at the time, I think were really open to it, to
Yep.
finding an avenue to rectify what was probably holding us back at the time. And then since being at Essendon, um, David Reed is the head of the mental skills program there, and I really enjoy the program that he's got going at Essendon at the moment. It's and that playing group as well is super open to that part of the game and that part of performance. So I couldn't um, advise any more to younger kids to be really open to it and to understand that it's a stressful environment, it's a stressful world, and if you can get onto it early, and you might save yourself some issues later down the track.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, mate, for sharing. That's it's something, no doubt. I think a lot of people tuning in, whether you're an athlete or not, would resonate with that. At a subconscious level, you do have that perception, but reality is, it's just like training in the gym. You might you want a strength coach, or if Federer's got a skills coach or a tactical coach, he's working on his game. It's just the same as working on your mental space. There's professionals and experts that are there to give you these tools to manage, like you said, life's tough, and performing and in the high performance environments even more challenging. So to be able to have these tools to prepare yourself and help your football, but also by the sounds of it, just enjoy life a lot more as well, and home life.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And there's so many things and resources available to people these days to find what works for them. And I've experimented a fair bit, and I say how stressful I was early on, and I'm still stressed today. But stress isn't always a bad thing. Like, there is good stress out there, and it's just having a healthy balance with it, and finding times where you need to be able to let go of, accept what's happened and the day, and be able to come home and relax and enjoy your days off. Enjoy, time with family and friends. But it's still, I anticipate the rest of my career is I'm still going to have really stressful moments and times of, mental strain. So it's just having the tools available to combat that.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the nature of wanting to get better all the time, isn't it? Like you
Yeah,
could easily sit by a tree and just relax, and that's going to be pretty stress free, or you can pursue the high performance game, whatever that is in life. For whether you're an athlete or an athlete in life that wants to perform and be the best leader in the business, or whatever it might be that you're doing, if you're pushing the boundaries and developing yourself, there's going to be an element of a learning curve, and stress comes with that. And like you said, it's sort of how you manage it, isn't it? That there's a difference between if it's sustainable or not for you.
yeah. I mean, if you want something, it usually comes at a cost. So just making sure you don't get too far into debt.
Yep. Yeah, love it. Nice analogy. Um, and then the shift from GWS to Essendon, was it something that you were looking at for a couple of years, or did it come pretty quickly? Take us through that transition in your life, and how hard was it from being there? Would have been your second home, I imagine, from getting
Yeah.
that routine to then making that change. How did you go with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, probably starts with, growing up as a Melbourne boy in Melbourne, wanting to play AFL. I grew up as a Carlton supporter and, just dreamt of playing for, a Melbourne football team. And, the existence of GWS during my childhood and, teens to mid-teens wasn't in existence. So, when that came up, it was pretty quick, from going to be remaining in Melbourne to find myself in Western Sydney. And Sydney did become a second home for me. It was somewhere where I, grew up, become an adult, found my independence, and met my girlfriend there, and we really had a really nice life in Sydney, and had such a great experience and connection to the football club. Even still today, I associate myself with GWS. I'm just not there at the moment, but it's a big part of my life that I'm really grateful for.
Yep.
Certainly during that time, I did have an idea that I'd love to come back and play, somewhat my second half of my career back in Melbourne and to experience, football for what it is in Melbourne with a big Melbourne club. Looking back, I'm really grateful that I'm able to do that. Like, I've experienced football at a startup club with no fan base to begin with, and in a society in Western Sydney where football was just so foreign to them, and it's actually, I say foreign early days, but today it's certainly been established.
Yep.
And then to be able to experience football at a football club that's about to have their 150th anniversary and is
crazy.
played in premierships and has 80,000+ members and plays in those big games. I'm really lucky to be experiencing it. So the decision to come back was stressful, but it's something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. That's for sure.
Yeah, you wanted to come home, and the Essendon Football Club, like you mentioned, it is a massive club. What are some of the perks that you've noticed if you compare, like you said, being part of a beginning of a new club? GWS have done it really successfully, but what would be some of the challenges that maybe Gold Coast Suns are going through, I guess, like developing a club compared to like a traditional club like Essendon did? As a player, is the tradition and the 150-year, like you mentioned, does that add an element of not motivation, but when there's big games like Anzac Day and things like that, do you find that it helps your performance being in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about the story you tell yourself and how you perceive things. And we probably, when I walked into Essendon, their rich history and the success that the club had was probably seen as a bit of a burden on the current group, and it's probably held the playing group back for a number of years. But we've had a bit of a shift in mindset under Ben Rutten around embracing what the club's achieved in the past and really, sort of leveraging off that connection with our past players and what the football club's done with the sash. So nothing's changed in history. It's just the way that we perceive it now.
Yep.
And so, in terms of what the perks are at Essendon over a startup club that I experienced at the Giants, it's still the same game of footy, still trying to achieve the same thing. But it's so in terms of having no history at the Giants versus an abundance of history at Essendon, it's there's advantages for both. So I haven't walked into Essendon going, wow, we're missing out on so much at the Giants. It's like just around what's the current situation, how do you perceive it to your advantage. At the Giants, I'm part of the infant years of the footy club, and played in the first game in a club at the time that had no history. And now I'm at a club I'm going to be part of the 150th anniversary, and I get to look back and look at the history books of the Essendon Footy Club. So I've just been really lucky to experience both sides of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go to the fans that have tuned in and sent through a couple of questions. We'll fire a couple at you, mate. First one from Troy Jones. Do you do anything or work with anyone, particularly in the off season, away from the club to work on your individual strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, I sort of got into a bit of a habit when I was in my first club of training on my own, because most guys at an interstate club usually move away or go back to their home states, and usually either training on their own or with mates, or lucky maybe a teammate if they're there in the same city. So I actually enjoy just doing a lot of my training on my own and getting fit and strong, having a bit of time to myself. I'm a highly motivated guy and I can get away with doing a lot of things on my own. But certainly, like when it comes to the football side of things, you can't be doing everything on your own, and just sort of link up with teammates that are available to me, which I found is pretty easy at the moment because none of the Essendon boys are able to get out of Victoria, so we're always at the footy club working on things in our spare time.
Yeah. And then, is there anything you do the day before a game that you feel really benefits you?
I was had a pretty structured routine early on, and felt I had to nail that for me to set myself up for a really good game. But it's amazing how things can change in 2 years with COVID and hubs, and having to fly in, fly out for games. And I've just sort of had to accept that I don't need everything to be perfect or have to nail the same thing every time before a game to play a good game.
Yep.
So I've been really flexible. It's probably it sounds pretty lame, but probably the most important thing I've tried to get done is just have a good night's sleep the night before a game, or at least 2 nights before a game. Just sleep's the most important thing for performance, for cognition, and for alertness. And if I can get a good night's sleep, then that's 80% of the job done. And then you work on your nutrition and your energy intake pre-game. But yeah, like I'm pretty relaxed these days. Nothing. Yeah, I'd love to be able to give an example of I do wheat picks every day, or I listen to this one song, or I walk
Yeah.
or do this thing. But the truth is, no, I don't. Not anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah. And how did you make that transition? Was it something that a coach recommended, or a player, or did you just come to yourself that you didn't need as much structure? You wanted to try a bit more flexibility.
Yeah, probably comes back to like that anxiety and that stress that you probably just didn't need to add on to yourself. Like, if I didn't have, a few years ago, if I didn't sleep well, or if I didn't do my morning walk, or if I didn't get sushi, chicken avocado sushi for lunch at the hotel I was at, it'd be an unnecessary stress for me to overcome before a game. And I just had a moment where I was like, I just don't need to be worried about one percenters like this. I can, seeing so many guys around the competition that do things differently, it means that there's other ways to get things done, and no one thing is the reason for a good game of footy. And obviously, along with working with mindfulness coaches and working on mental skills, it just started to focus on the big rocks in my life around sleep and hydration and nutrition, and getting the body warm before a game was going to set me up for a good game, and I didn't need to worry about the little things that just were going to add these stupid stresses onto me.
Yeah, right. There you go. It's a simple you've mentioned that the simplistic approach, how important it is, but also doing the basics, like you said, nutrition, sleep, and hydration, which is all three things that people can do. You don't need any fancy equipment for that.
Well, yeah, and probably as you get older, you're learning more every day. And I'm an avid reader and researcher on high performance, and I just started coming across against a lot of a lot of research out there around sleep deprivation, what it can do to your hydration, and all these sorts of things. And I just started to increase my knowledge around what was really important and what
Yeah,
wasn't. And like, let's just keep this simple.
yeah, yeah. Um, and plan after footy. That's Troy's third question. He's asked through, what is your plan for life after footy? Have you thought that far down the track?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's still a little while away. I love to play football for as long as I can. But at the moment, I could see something happening, overseas for me for around 12 months or so after football. I'm doing a commerce finance degree at the moment, and I'll have that done pretty shortly. And then, I've got an idea in my mind where I wouldn't mind doing some overseas study, potentially in Europe, and maybe just packing up for 12 months and taking, Georgie and any future kids over there for 12 months and, yeah, experiencing life out of Australia, and then come back and resume life in whatever career that is. It's probably going to be in some form of finance, but yeah, we'll wait and see.
Yep. This one's from Lucas. If you have a poor game or a narrow loss, how do you boost personal and team confidence to get up for the next week? That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's probably like the answers in itself. There is next week comes around pretty quickly, so you're forced to move on and address a bad game pretty quickly. So I mean, you play a bad game, and the first thing is sort of acknowledging and accepting it, and trying to find where the team went wrong or where the individual went wrong, and so you go through the game review and address that and accept it. Accept that you're human and it's an imperfect game, but don't wash over where you can improve. And then you just go about it. You train it that week and you get ready for the next game, because you haven't got that much time. And if you're going into the next game, carrying things from last week, you're just going to set yourself up for another bad game. So my experience in football around the best players I played with and against, and as a team, is the quicker you can sort of free yourself up and let go of the bad games, the better off you're going to be for the next one.
Yeah,
and that'd be for most things in life, that's for sure. Certainly in sport.
yeah, absolutely. And then
Yeah,
last
good
one.
question.
Yeah. Hey, Dill, what specific training do you do for your explosiveness?
Yeah, if you want to run fast, then run fast. That's that's just, yeah, it sounds simple. It was Lockie Wilmot and John Quinn used to tell me this all the time. I didn't really quite understand what it meant, but and Jack, you're gonna be able to shed more light on this than me. But yeah, in the weights in the gym, I do a lot of high explosive movements, powerful movements. If I'm doing a strength lift, it's usually supplemented with some sort of explosive movement in between sets. But probably the biggest thing that's helped me in recent years is not trying to just train, the energy system or the muscle, but also to train the efficiency of your movement. And that's where we sort of go back to what I've been doing with Mark McGrath around, increasing efficiency of my body rather than trying to increase, my strength, my speed, my aerobic capacity. If I can, put it in a car perspective, you don't always need to increase the engine to have a faster car. You can, remove the trailer hanging off the back of it if that's what's holding it back. So, yeah, I mean, it's an in-depth answer, and it's not a simple one, but powerful movements lead to, more powerful movements. Yeah, that's that's as simple as it is, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a good segue. We'd have, I think strength and conditioning coaches seem to be the most popular people that listen into the podcast, footballers that watch live, and then S&Cs, and you're famous in the S&C world for your razor curl. How
Yeah.
long did it take for you to get to that where everyone's seen the video, no doubt those listening in? How long did it take to get to the razor curl your hamstrings to be able to do it to that level?
Yeah, I mean, I've answered this question a bit, and I think a lot of people that aren't in the S&C industry they want to hear that I was born with that sort of strength, and it's just a talent that I've carried in my life, and I could just do it straight away. But we know that that's not the case in most things in life, and I had to build up 3 or 4 years of conditioning and strength work in the gym to get to that razor curl exercise. And Lockie Wilmot, was the S&C coach at the time at the Giants, and we'd been doing a lot of hamstring eccentric loading and things like that for the years leading into that one exercise. So, it took me 3 to 4 years before I had the ability to do that. So when that happened, people saw that moment, but ask yourself, ask anyone out there. Like, it took years to develop my body and develop the ability to be able to do something like that. So there's the amount of people that have tried to go out and do it straight away of no work or minimal work. They usually find that they can hurt themselves pretty easily.
Yeah, have a broken nose almost.
Yeah, well, yeah. People think I'm saying hamstrings, but it's always the face.
Yeah. And so the hamstring loading was a big emphasis from
Yeah.
on another side for S&Cs. Being a professional athlete, you've had a few strength and conditioning coaches in your time. What do you like from S&Cs to support your game, and on the other side of it, what do you dislike? What can be something that sort of feels like it's hindrance to your game from a strength and conditioning point of view?
Yeah, good question. I've been really lucky with the S&C coaches I've had throughout my career. And they've all played different roles in my journey. From like Lockie Wilmot, who was got this crop of 17, 18-year-old kids, and really had to take it slow and develop a really good base in the gym. So we weren't doing razor curls from day one. He was doing the most basic movements and strength training, for the first season or two, and then we gradually built up to, achieving, more explosive, more extreme movements. But the technique and emphasis on the technique and doing things right was so important with Lockie. And then obviously I got myself to a really really good level from an S&C perspective, and it worked in really well because I got Alex Natira, who came in after Lockie at the Giants, and he is come from a sprinter's background and played rugby at one of the highest levels, and he had this approach of no one athlete is the same, and so no program should be the same for the athlete. So he really was good at sharpening the sword and around guys' strengths and what they needed. So at the time, I think of myself versus Callan Ward. I'm a very powerful athlete. Fast twitch fiber, almost like a sprinter in terms of what an AFL athlete gets. Versus Callan Ward was, a more slow twitch fiber guy, more of a real resilient, slower athlete. I'm trying not to pot him here, but I used to get into him all the time. And what we'd find is that I would do far less training in the gym compared to Callan because, if I did too much training, it would really blunt the effect and burn me out. My sharpness wouldn't be there. Versus Callan, who would be able to do a lot more slower, strenuous lifting because he needed it.
Yep.
And that really made had a really good effect on that program under Alex around sharpening your sword, and you always need to be doing what's right for you, and it's not one program fits all. So that was to answer the question, it's really find out what type of athlete you are and what you're trying to train, and then train it, to be really cautious about not overdoing it.
Yeah, that individualized approach, like you said, all athletes are different.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks, mate. Thanks so much for your time and sharing us and your open and honesty, mate. I really appreciate talking about the highs and lows of high performance and how you got to where you are today and playing at the highest level. So no doubt they're developing footballers that have tuned in, but also the strength and conditioning coaches as well have taken a fair few gems from it, mate. And thanks so much for your time.
Nah, mate, really appreciate you having me. I could feel like I could talk hours on, this sort of forum. So I really, really appreciate having me. And yeah, I mean, I love the S&C aspect of footy, and, I've just been really lucky to be surrounded by some, really impressive people in that industry. And essentially I'm just regurgitating their knowledge. So hopefully if
You've got a good job of it, mate.
if they're listening in, hopefully I just did them justice.
Yeah, absolutely you have. And what are you excited about for 2021, mate? What's on the horizon for the rest of the year for you?
Mate, 2021, did you say?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
for the end.
At the moment, mate, it's just sort of a bit of a reset and sort of unwinding a bit. Obviously, keeping because we're just 3 or 4 weeks after our last game, so just mental refresher, mate, and get back into training and spend some time. If I can get away out of Melbourne when we can, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to getting back training with the guys for pre-season and building our campaign for a big one next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of excitement in the way Essendon's playing footy at the moment, and it seems like there's a lot of momentum in the club. And talking about this year, it must have been a successful year in review, I imagine, for the group.
I mean, yeah, we so many positives to take out of our season, but again, there's so many things that we need to get better at. So, yeah, it was mostly perceived as a good year for us. We took some some steps forward, which is great. It's a sign of a good club, and but at the same time, we understand we've got a ton of work ahead of us for us to compete against the those top teams, and if we can get there and do the work, then we'll I believe we'll set ourselves up for a really good crack at it next year, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and that Essendon fans, you mentioned off air that you've had a surgery-free year, so the body's feeling good, mate.
Yeah, I've, to be honest, I had a really rough year with the body, so it's nice to be able to sort of have a bit of time feeling good. I mean, I did my hammy this time last year, and really disrupted my off season.
Yep.
Then I did my meniscus, did the medial meniscus tear round 2 and missed 16 weeks. And then when I came back, I was just not up to it physically. My niggles and that were shocking, and it was probably a bit of a liability for the boys out there at times. So I'm looking forward to getting back to being as fit as I can be and being able to to move really well for next year. So hopefully I can stay out in the park, mate, and get some consistency in the training and not overdo it.
Yeah, awesome, mate. We'll be watching. Looking forward to breaking those lines, that explosive power, like you said, and breakaway speed.
Nah, thanks, mate.
Awesome. Cheers, Dylan. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, guys.
Great episode, guys. For those that tuned in a little bit later on, make sure you watch the full episode. It's on our YouTube channel, and we'll launch on our podcast recording on Spotify and iTunes very soon. Shout out to Troy Jones and Lucas O'Day. Your questions were awesome, mate, and well thought of, and good to see you guys thinking and taking some questions to help your game as well. So good work, guys. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And our next guest will be launched on Sunday at 6 p.m. I'll be live streaming. So thanks for tuning in. Till next time.